this thing. That little green light's funny. Let's see where we are at. Okay. Let's see. The deadening dynamic. Perhaps the greatest impediment to human creativity is the natural decay that sets in over time in any kind of medium or profession. In the sciences or in business, a certain way of thinking or acting that once had success quickly becomes a paradigm and established procedure. As the years go by, people forget the initial reason for this paradigm and simply follow a lifeless set of techniques. In the arts, someone establishes a style that is new and vibrant, speaking to the particular spirit of the times, or the zeitgeist. It has an edge because it is so different. Soon, imitators pop up everywhere. It becomes a fashion, something to conform to, even if the conformity appears to be rebellious or edgy. This can drag on for 10, 20 years. It eventually becomes a cliche, pure style without any real emotion or need. Nothing in culture escapes this deadening dynamic. This problem, however, sets up a tremendous opportunity for creative types. The process goes as follows. You can begin by looking inward. You have something you want to express that is unique to yourself and related to your inclinations. You must be sure it is not something that is sparked by some trend or fashion, but that it comes from you and is real. Perhaps it is a sound that you are not hearing in music, a type of story not being told, a type of book that does not seem to fit into the usual tidy categories. Let the idea, the sound, the image take root in you. Sensing the possibility of a new language or way of doing things, you must make the conscious decision to play against the very conventions that you find dead and want to get rid of. Daily law. People are dying for the new, for what expresses the spirit of the time in an original way. By creating something new, you will create your own audience and attain the ultimate position of power in culture. Yep, trendsetters. That's what that's talking about. Trend setters. And in order to set a trend, you can't conform to the current trends that are in place. Break free from what's already being done and do something different, or at least something that hasn't been done in a while. They say everything moves in cycles and there's nothing new under the sun. So even if it's something not completely original, it can be a play on something that's already been. That's what makes sense to me. All right. This paragraph has to do with counterattack strategy in terms of warfare or conflict or competition. The counterattack is, in fact, the origin of modern strategy, the first real example of an indirect approach to war. It represents a major breakthrough in thinking. Instead of being brutal and direct, the counterattack is subtle and deceptive, using the enemy's energy and aggression to bring about his downfall. Although it is one of the oldest and most basic strategies in warfare, it remains in many ways the most effective and has proven highly adaptable to modern conditions. Counterattack. The main point to a counterattack is it relies heavily on your opponent's movement. You need them to move first in order to counterattack. So to a certain degree, you actually need to be ready to be attacked. You can't launch a counterattack without being attacked first, which is a precarious position to put yourself into. I like the idea of that, though, because by needing your enemy to attack first, or your opponent, let's just say opponent, because enemy is strictly warfare. I don't think if it's like a creative endeavor, like a sport, that you should look at them as your enemy. They are your opponent to be defeated, not an enemy to be vanquished. But anyways, the idea of of launching a counterattack. That's a very how would I say that? That's not reckless. There's like an edge of fearlessness that's required for you to want your opponent to make the first move in order for you to make a counter move. I like the idea of that. Right? You want them to do something. That kind of dynamic gets my energy going, especially if it's like, okay, all right, do it again. If you want to do something, do it. I'm ready. Yeah, I think I've always been better at even like play fighting with like friends when I was younger. I was always more better on when. See, my mind works a little weird. Not weird, but I guess it's just different. When it comes to like action reaction type situation, I like the position of reaction. It seems more. I don't know how to describe that. It seems more natural for me to be in that position. That's another one of those situations where my mind goes completely quiet and silent and everything slows down. And I'm watching the action unfold in front of me. Whatever the action is. Like this kind of has happened when it comes, not counter-attack, but counter-action, I guess you could say. When it comes to breaking up a dogfight or having to deal with a fear-aggressive dog. Because fear-aggressive dogs, they're not actively advancing towards you trying to bite, but the moment you go to try to touch them, they try to bite you. So that situation's a little bit different. Because like some of the dogs I've had to handle, like say I have to get them on a leash, I'm technically advancing first. But I'm doing that knowing they're going to bite. And knowing that they're going to bite, I'm waiting for that to happen so I can do whatever it is I need to do next. And it's kind of hard to describe what it is I'm going to do next, because technically I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just looking for the bite. And then once that bite comes, I would naturally react, whether it was, a quick grab at a certain point so I could handle them and maybe take them outside, or at least get the leash on. Because once they bite for the first time, I get to see how they move. And that's really what I'm looking for. So I guess that kind of applies to like, just say like I don't know, like a competitive martial art or, combat sport. Kind of want to give a feint real quick just to see how they take to it, what they do. So I guess to a certain degree, I was kind of doing that with dogs. Give them just a, not quick, but, like a graceful hand movement or gesture towards them to see what kind of reaction they give. And then in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, I see. You get to see the energy level of the bite. You get to see if they actually might move. Because sometimes they will kind of advance towards you. But it was never like to the point where they're coming at you like in non-stop. Normally it's just to get you to move away. I guess that's where that daily law never came into play when it comes to dealing with dogs with trauma, because that's nonsense. It does go away after a while. The trauma, you can diminish the effects of it. Rehabilitation with dogs is fairly easy. Since where I was working, there was always dogs to rehabilitate. The process never became dead to me, like that law described. It was never just, business as usual. This is, boring. It never got boring. Not when you're dealing with dogs that are in need of rehabilitation. So I think that was a good experience in regards to everything always being fresh. And you have to be sharp when you're dealing with that kind of situation. You can't be lax, or you have to stay relaxed, but you can't be lax in terms of like not paying attention or not on your toes or not sharp in the mind. Dealing with dogs in general, you always have to be like that. In the pack, constantly, I see a lot of people, people I work with, they don't pay attention like I do. There's where I work, there's 2 yards side by side, and you can see from one yard into the other. So I see them in there, because I'm constantly moving around and walking around and looking around. So every once in a while, I'll see into the other yard, and I'll see them just sitting on their phone. And in my mind, I'm like, if a fight breaks out, you're already a step ahead. Several steps behind. First you're sitting. So instead of your first movement being a movement towards the fight because you're on your feet, the first thing you have to do is just stand up. That's already seconds lost. And then they're not even looking at the pack, they're looking at their phones most of the time. So now you have to like orient yourself to where the fight is, and these are seconds that are passing by. Seconds can mean the difference between a dog getting hurt or not. I never do that. I'm always on my feet, and I'm always moving around. I'm always in motion. So if something does happen, the first thing I have to do is just redirect the motion that's already in play. And luckily, the way I work with the dogs, I'm constantly trying to keep their attention on me, because I figure the more they're focused on what I'm doing, the less focused they are on each other. And that way there's a less chance of getting into a fight. These are all the things I do to try to just diminish the opportunity for that event to take place. So in terms of that environment, there's no chance of that deadening effect to set in. Now this other job is different. The one I'm going to now is much different. You're literally doing the same thing every day, all the time. It doesn't change. But I still found a way to stay in motion and keep it fresh for me. Like, most of these workstations and most of the operations on the production line require you to sit. But I'm in the fortunate position to be at a point in the production line where I'm working 2 different stations in tandem. I'm kind of juggling how the station operates in terms of the process. So I can afford to not sit down. I can stay standing up. And I'm moving back and forth, probably within 10 to 15 foot distance. I'm moving back and forth constantly. So for me, that's how I keep this job fresh. Plus, I always have a podcast going in my ear. So the conversation is always fresh and new. And that's how this works for me. But I guess that could happen in anything. That deadening effect, it can happen in relationships, not just at work, but your personal relationship becomes too routine and too everyday. That deadening effect can definitely set in. That's when you just become complacent. That's why I appreciate the experience I've had, because every day is fresh for me. It's like the newest day I have, the only day I get, and the one I get to enjoy. And I do my best to not let the little things stress me out. Definitely the big things don't stress me out. I'm not worried about any of the stuff going on in the world. It's just entertainment for me to watch everybody else stress out over it. That's about it. About all that's going on in my world. Nice big truck. That's so my drink. Ow. A bird pooed on my windshield. I just cleaned them. That's the worst. I used to drive a truck. Truck drivers are constantly cleaning the windows. So it's kind of a pet peeve for my windshield to be clean. And this bird got me. Man, it's been super hot lately. This is the time of the year I don't prefer in terms of temperature. Just makes everything a little more challenging to bear. Yeah, to be honest, I think when it goes back to that counterattack topic, I think it really is advantageous to be in the position to counterattack. Because even when it comes to like verbal debate, to go first, it's like you're showing all your cards. Without any knowledge of what the opponent's bringing to the table yet. And to be the one to be able to sit there and hear your debate opponent go first, you already have kind of in mind what you're going to say, because all debates have a topic and you know what you're going to speak on, so you get to prepare. So not only do you have your position verbalized, you get to hear what your opponent's going to say first. And in that regard, if there's any fine-tuning or adjustments you have to make to what you had to say, because maybe he might touch on a point you weren't thinking about or didn't cover or didn't think of in the way they did, you get to, on the fly, make a mental adjustment to what I was going to say here because he just said that. So now you get to present your position already having the knowledge of what your opponent thinks instead of having to guess right away. They just literally told you their position in that debate because they went first. But when it comes to that kind of competition, being in the position to counterattack is highly advantageous. I think, prefer to go second in a debate. Now, when it comes to a combat sport, it's a little different because obviously they're not trying to hit you with words; they're trying to hit you with fists. But I guess, at least in that kind of situation, you get some information from being attacked first. You get to see the speed of which they attack. You get to see what kind of body movements were what kind of head situations they might have. If there's any tells, you might get to see a tell if you're sharp enough to take that in. Even if they try to feint, you get to see what kind of movements they express. Maybe it's the same thing. It's just a little bit more high. The consequences are higher. A little bit more real. And plus, from being in the position of the counterattack, you're making your opponent expend energy first. All things are an energy exchange. And the first person to expend energy typically is the first person to run out of energy. All things being equal. If they go, then you go, and they go, then you go. If that's the way the process plays out till the end. At the end, all things being equal and fair, which all things aren't. But let's just say they are. You will be able to go last. You get the last and final move. Obviously all things don't play out that way, but on the theoretical level, even if it's just a 2-move game, you're going last. You get the final move, which is the counterattack. Now it's funny. I was just thinking about, Dana White has a fight league called Power Slap. And it is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Literally 2 men standing in front of each other. And they're going to allow the other person to slap them across the face with an open hand as hard as they can. There is no defense in this league. You cannot defend. You are going to get slapped. This is what's happening. Now, in that situation, you want to go first. Because the whole nature of the event is your opponent's going to allow you to hit them. So if you're in the position to go second, you've already been affected by being hit first. And then that can't have a good effect on your opportunity to strike. It's one thing to counterattack with the opportunity to make your opponent miss. But when you're required to allow your opponent to strike, that's never good. That kind of situation you want to go first. Because you are going to take, so if you go first, you're going to take something out of your opponent with that first slap. Power slap being the example. Because that's a physical strike that you are guaranteed to land. And that has to affect your opponent in some way. Even though they may act like it didn't. I just hit you. That's gonna do something. Both physically and mentally. Because think about it, that first guy that gets to go first, he's fresh in the mind, he's fresh in the body, he's untouched, he's got all that confidence. But that second guy, he just got a little bit of something taken out of him. That confidence is going to be hard to maintain a level of fresh confidence, having just allowed your opponent to hit you. So to be honest, I think that whole league is stupid. I guess it's entertaining for the audience, and Dana White's loving it because he's making money off it. But as a fighter in that league, you're not even a fighter. There's no technique. An open hand slapping your opponent and him allowing you to do it. That's nothing to brag about. And really, in that kind of league, you want like one of those power lifter physiques. Because you're moving a lot of weight. You want a heavy hand. You can't be... maybe there's weight. I haven't even watched any kind of power slap competitions. I'm sure there's weight classes. Just still kind of ridiculous, but the whole thing is ridiculous. This is why we're living in idiocracy. We have a power slap league. It'd be funny if countries settled, political and territorial disputes in a more organized way, like some sort of competitive combat sport. That's not our, war. That'd be kind of interesting. You get your best fighter, and we're gonna get our best fighter. And they're going to enter into an MMA competition. There's going to be a ref. You can't kill your opponent, but you must make them submit, or at least you can knock them out. It's extremely rare that someone dies from being knocked out in a combat sport. I'm sure it's happened, but compared to the amount of times combat matches have been held, it is an extremely rare event. Would that be interesting? Surprised Dana White hasn't tried to organize that. Good luck getting the countries on board. Yeah, we'll wager the West Bank on a one-on-one fight. Oh yeah. Settle the whole Russia-Ukraine dispute. All right, man, get your best boxers. Lomachenko's from Ukraine, right? Get your best Russian boxer out here. Let's go. That'd be fantastic. Or even better, get the heads of each country to fight each other. That would change who could be president for sure. Imagine Trump getting in the ring, getting knocked out by Putin. Putin would knock Trump out. That would be fantastic. Can't be some big old fat slob. I'm not saying Trump's a fat slob, but he's not in shape like Putin. That's just a fact. I'm not over here being a fan of Putin. Not a fan of Russia. I love America. I'm just saying. Putin would mess Trump up. Everybody would mess up Zelensky. Who else? China's leader, I'm pretty sure he'd get messed up. Yeah, maybe we couldn't do that. We because then there's certain there's certain leaders that would just end up dominating the world real quick. But it sure would be fun to watch. I'm surprised Dana White hasn't started an arm wrestling league. Doing the stupid power slap thing. Why not arm wrestling? Why not thumb wrestling? Alright, tickle competition? Dana White's tickle league. But you have to be ticklish. There's some people that aren't ticklish. You could try to tickle them all you want, it just doesn't do anything. They can't compete. You have to have the tickle reflex. Or like a double dutch league where your opponent has to handle the ropes, right? Can't be your team doing it. Got to be your opponent trying to trip you up. What else? Yeah. Fencing, that'd be pretty cool. Why isn't fencing more popular? It's an Olympic sport. That's actually pretty cool. That's like life or death. Simulated, anyways. Yeah, don't put me in charge. I'll have all kinds of crazy stuff going on. I just realized you guys probably can't hear this pretty music I have on because of the noise canceling situation. So you can only probably really hear me. But I have it on KUSC, so I'm listening, classical on a very low level as I drive. And before I had these mics, the phone could pick it up a little bit, but I don't think you guys can hear what I'm hearing right now. Maybe. We'll see. I can hear it. Maybe the mic's picking it up. But then again, I don't know if it's part of the noise canceling, and I don't know if the noise canceling only kicks in when I'm talking. So I'm not really sure how that works. It's just canceling background noise 100% of the time, or the process kicks in once I start to talk to help enhance my voice. I'm not sure how that works. But I know I'm here. So what do we read? The deadening effect. Familiarity Too much familiarity creates a deadening effect. So whatever it is, try not to let that set in. It's always best to keep everything fresh and everything new and everything vibrant. Once that deadening effect sets in, it's hard to get it back. That freshness, that vibrancy. And always be ready for a counterattack. If you seem to find yourself on the attack, just know that whoever that's against might be setting you up for a counterattack. That's a huge tactic in boxing. Setup. So that's something to think about. Or do the best you can to draw your opponent into an attack so you can counterattack. That's another thought. Either way, I am here and I'm ready to go. Go to work.